I apologize for those of you who know this, but India is going down under Asia, right? It's pushing up this way. Now, the Himalaya is defined as just this bit here, between that triangle, which is Nanga Parbat, which was in the news last week because Tom Ballard and Daniele Nadi died trying to do a winter climb, and that's Namche Barwa, which is hidden deep in China in a very inaccessible zone. And that is the bit of India that's being scraped off as it goes down underneath, and it's all being pushed up. Right now, everything else is bits of the Asian plate that's just being elevated as the Indian plate goes underneath. Now, these two are basically the focal points of, you can imagine like a chisel or something, you're just hammering it in there. The first thing that happens is you get a bunch of crumple zones forming around the points of most force. These two mountains are rising 1 inch a year or something like that, which is, that's rise minus erosion, which are almost equal. But all these different crumple zones, K marks the Karakoram, which is hiding right behind Nanga Parbat. And then you've got the Hindu Rise, the Hindu Kush, the Pamir. The Tian Shan is not part of this crumple, right? It's older. So the Tian Shan is about the same age as the US Rockies, 40 million years. All of this stuff is 8 million years old. All the crumples around here have names like Nyanshin Tangla and Kangri Garpo and Dashueshan and so on that you've probably never heard of. And unfortunately, you're probably not going to hear of them for a while longer because all of the counties of East Tibet are still totally shut. So the only place that you can go climbing is like from where you see these deep valleys. That's the west end of Sichuan province. And the most famous thing in Sichuan province is Minya Konka, known in Chinese as Gongashan. I think I first put this together for a show in China, which is why I marked with a G rather than by its Tibetan name. But it is 7,500 meters, and it's basically the very first, or last, depending how you look at it, thing that rises up from the flatlands of Sichuan. There's 100 million people living in that basin. So this is the basic geography. There's many more things you could say. Why did I mark Kailash? So for at least 4,000 years, the people who from that area have known that if you're a snowflake and you melt on the east side of Kailash, you go into the Yarlung and you flow around Namche Barwa and out into the Brahmaputra. If you're a snowflake who melts on the west side of Kailash, you end up in the Indus and you go around Nanga Parbat and out this way. So it really is the watershed of the entire Greater Himalaya. And even before Google Earth, people actually realized that stuff, basically by riding by with a horse. Now, who of you have seen the movie 7 Years in Tibet? Right, true story. Heinrich Harrer and Peter Aufschneider, they were interned by the British in a Dehradun, which was somewhere around here, after a failed 1939 expedition to Nanga Parbat. And they got sick of it after a while and escaped in 1943, but the only thing they could do was walk that way. And they ended up in Lhasa, which is about there. So this was also, I think, in 43 or 44. So that's the last thing that's worth saying. Actually, I won't say it yet. I'll postpone it for a little bit. So just to, unfortunately, the rules are not all the same. The mountains are all the same. One mountain is very much like another, except that one is more beautiful and one is more unclimbed. But exactly what you have to do to climb them depends on those human-drawn borders there. But this much is Nepal. Bhutan is essentially closed to all climbing because all the mountains are sacred. India, I'm not a big expert. There's a gentleman in the audience who talked to me earlier who knows far more about India than me. I've only been there once. Sikkim is very hard to go to. They charge particularly high fees. The whole East Tibet, which is this gorge country from here on down, is all closed. Plateau Tibet, which is from here to the west, you can do things, but there's not much very interesting to do except on the border, as I'll show you in a little bit later. And then Pakistan, okay, this part of, the part that Pakistan and India are waging a war over, the Indians don't let anybody in their half. The Pakistanis are like, we own this, come on in. So I wish the Indians would take that attitude a bit more, but this is what's up here. I'm not a big expert on Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and so on, although the mountain where I won that Pele d'Or is up here in the Tian Shan, but on the Chinese side. So that's the politics, and this is what you're going to hear about later. So I'm going to focus on northern Pakistan, which is where all the mountains are, and western Nepal. Now, as I put a little note here, there's plenty of 6,000 meter peaks in central and eastern Nepal as well. But from Annapurna all the way to Kanchenjunga, it's just a little bit hard to know that any of them are unclimbed because the people have been going there with or without authorization for more than half a century now. So it's not particularly wise to make large claims about having done something unclimbed. Okay, this is how much it really costs. So this is actually the information that Jacob thought everybody should know. So
Mostly me.
no, it was you who asked for this information to be publicized, so there you go. So if you really want to climb high peaks, it costs a lot. But these are not insane numbers anymore. But note that Nepal quotes its numbers per person. That is, of course, Everest in the spring season. That's K2, but that's per person, and that's for your whole team. So this is really in a class of its own, and this is not going to be a talk about Everest. Now, any other 8,000er you want to do, you don't, it already almost seems reasonable by comparison, right? But the important numbers are here, right? If you want to do new 6,000 meter peaks or high 6,000 meter peaks in Nepal, you could pay $200 per person, right? If you want to climb, a 7,000 meter peak in Pakistan that's not in the Baltoro region, I'll show you what I mean by that. It's $300 for your team. Basically, it's hard, compared to your overall cost, it's really not worth being illegal. And there is a big problem with this. If you're busted, you will screw it up for everybody. And there's a little note here that says all peaks, including listed trekking peaks, currently require a guide. The guide costs $35 a day plus equipment, which is another $600. That was not a requirement until 2 years ago. But some Spanish guys decided to do an illegal ascent and splash it all over Facebook and say, we climbed this thing with no permit. We think everybody should do that. And this is how the Nepalese government reacts. Right? I mean, 1/3 of their income is tourism and trekking. It's not kosher to just go breaking their rules. Right? If Nepalese people came to Spain and broke their rules, like, I don't know, climbing the roof of a cathedral with ice axes, right? Right? The Spanish would not be wildly impressed. So, I mean, the Nepalese do consider their mountains as gods, but in Nepal you do a puja and ask for forgiveness, right? In Bhutan you just don't go. So, I mean, think about these numbers a little bit before you compare them to your airfare and other things like that before you decide that you don't really need to pay for it. Those guys are people too, and nowadays we don't do racism, so we don't think that they're just some banana republic that doesn't have rules, right? Okay, now so I worked my way around the slide this way. Back to Pakistan. Pakistan was actually responsible for driving all these prices down. The Pakistanis really get the feeling that, in China, the peak fee is $100,000. And every single year they get 100,000 times $0. And that doesn't seem to bother them. Right? The guys sitting in the permit office have a job anyway. And they don't really care about the guys who might actually make any money, giving mules or transporting your gear or anything else, or giving you food, cooking for you. In Pakistan they do, right? They would like to keep the prices low so that lots of people come. They want $2,000 per person total expenditure in Pakistan times 3, 4, 5, 10,000 people who come, right? So that's the model that we would like to have going forward, right? We cannot make them, just because they can come and climb our mountains for nothing, doesn't mean that, we can insist on climbing their mountains for nothing. In the end, it's theirs. Okay, you could try to organize the entire expedition yourself. You could try to contact the central office yourself, but really, in the end, if you want to do this in a finite amount of time, you're going to need somebody to arrange. In Pakistan, it's the security clearance is the single most important thing. And then your permit, your domestic flights, because you can't just book them on the internet in either country. Any jeeps that you need, all your porters, your guide or sirdar. The sirdar is just the guy who organizes the porters. Your cook and assistant cook, and all of these guys require insurance by the laws of the country you're operating in. So it's tough for you to get all this stuff straight. So why don't you just get an agent, right? The agent knows what the rules are, and the agents have worked quite a lot of the time with people like you. And so they know exactly what you want, right? They know that you don't want to spend a lot of money. They know that you don't need to stay in a 5-star hotel in Islamabad. Okay, this kind of stuff. They know that you don't need an oxygen bottle carried for you. They are aware of the difference between 8,000 meter peak climbers and the rest of us. So normally for an agent, you would pay your agent $150 per person if it's a small trip, right? If it's just a 6,000 meter peak from which the permit is a few $100s. If you're on a big, and this is 5 or 6 weeks, if you're there for more than 2 months trying to do a 7,000er, you might pay more per person because there's more logistics, right? The Sunda in Pakistan earns $25 a day, the cook's $20. In Nepal, the guides they have already gone through some sort of government accreditation and they get $35 per day. Porters 10 to 15. Most of the time in Nepal now, your stuff is not carried by porters. You know, it's getting to be, you know, in China for a long time, people don't carry stuff. That's a job for beasts of burden, right? And it's becoming like that in Nepal now as well. I mean, as people get a little bit more income and a little bit more view of the rest of the world and feeling of how much effort it is to make money in different ways, this is miserable work carrying 30 kilograms. So why would you do it, right? Mules can do it. So, and having mules carry your loads actually works out a lot cheaper than having people carry your loads. That's the price of a one-way flight from Islamabad up to Gilgit or Skardu, and that's the price to get to a place like Lukla one way. Unfortunately in Nepal, if you're going to places in West Nepal, you need 2 flights in one direction. You have to fly first to Nepalganj down at the flatlands, and then up to the mountains. And so you're looking at a $600 domestic airfare for an expedition. Or you could take the bus along the flatlands and save yourself a bit. Anyway, here's some names. If anybody wants to take photographs of those, these are people I've worked with relatively recently who know what's going on. You could regard this as a shameless plug for my friends, but in the end, like everything else, they know what you want and they will give you a reasonably good job and will not rip you off. For example, if you go with Nazir Sabir, in Pakistan, he always charges twice as much as everybody else. Asian Trekking is the single biggest name in Nepal, but ditto. All the old established Nepalese agents like Royal Mountain and Asian and so on, they've been doing this since, every trek involved a caravan of 100 porters, and you would have a cooking crew and a cooking tent, and they would make you breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? And they would stop you for 2 hours just to okay, this is the other important thing you need to know. This is the one that I almost told you earlier. Okay, the monsoon is a big band of rain that comes up through the Bay of Bengal, but also through the Gulf of Arabia, and kind of sweeps up and hits the mountains like this and hangs over them in the summer and then retreats again. Now, if you're climbing in the Himalaya, June, July, and August are genetically disastrous. Right? You really do not want to go there. It's warm and it's snowing all the time. There can be thunderstorms. You have a good chance of being caught in an avalanche. But the permits are really cheap. So they do actually have monsoon trekking permits and monsoon climbing permits, but almost nobody bothers to publish the monsoon climbing costs because it's sort of ridiculous to think about climbing. Trekking in the monsoon, some people say it's great as long as you have an umbrella. The important thing is that these mountains, there's really only 2 seasons of the year, monsoon and winter. And the monsoon actually starts in April in Sichuan, and it doesn't pull back until October, right? So I really don't like climbing in the rain, and I tend to go in winter, which is the rest of the year. So November can be particularly good. In fact, November is best because if your route depends on ice, the ice forms up after the monsoon, and the rest of the winter there's this biting cold dry wind blowing down across the Tibetan plateau, and it basically just sublimes your ice route away. So one of the things that I'm famous for is climbing a hard route on Mount Grovador, which is in Sichuan. And it was attempted by Mick Fowler and Paul Ramsden, who've won many more PLA d'Or than me. The only thing they did wrong is they went in April. They're much better climbers than I am, but we went in October and we found ice this thick on the crux, and they had no ice at all on the crux, just crappy rock. So they failed and we succeeded. But it's this kind of thing that, this is why you come to this talk, to get this kind of information, right? So by contrast, this region, the monsoon is kind of marginal, right? It's basically a high altitude desert here. Not much rain gets behind Nanga Parbat, and almost none gets behind the Karakoram chain. So up there, there's no grass. The rivers are black, right? All the dust of these mountains is being gotten away by these rivers, which basically just cut their way down through this rather friable landscape like chainsaws. But still, these years, July and August are genetically, when I climbed K2, in June we had 5 days of good weather, 2 bad. 5 good, 2 bad. As soon as July came along, it was 5 bad, 2 good. 5 bad, 2 good. And you had to start aiming for your weather window. So it's, I don't know if there's anything that you can't already read on here. Nepal, people talk about the pre and post monsoon. Everybody loves the pre-monsoon because everybody thinks about 8,000ers. In fact, the 8,000ers are, this is not the best way to show it, but the 8,000ers are here, and there's a whole bunch of foothills. And if you're anywhere in the foothills, the clouds are boiling up out of the lowlands every day, and there are thunderstorms. So you have to be a little bit lucky to avoid the thunderstorms. There can be a period of high pressure weather, but once again, it's 3 days in every 10. It's only on the 8,000ers that the clouds don't really boil all the way up. So I much prefer post-monsoon. Post-monsoon is a lot more stable. There are no more thunderstorms. There can be clouds kind of coming up, and they can protect your ice route from being destroyed by the sunshine, which shines all day, because if there are no clouds, no low clouds coming up, because there are no high clouds coming from anywhere, right? So only towards the end of November do you get winter winds. So I usually go in October or even November now has been the most stable in the last couple of years. So Pakistan is much more complicated. So in Nepal, at least in post-monsoon, all the stars align, no problem, right? Maybe in pre-monsoon also, especially on the higher peaks. In Pakistan, nothing ever lines up, right? June has the most stable weather. It has long days. The temperatures are still okay, but the winter snow can be a disaster. If you get avalanche by it, you're done, right? And you can be groveling up to your knee waist in old snow if you're not careful, right? July and August is when it's warmest, but then you get these monsoon flows, and then, if you look at historical data for all the 8,000ers, you see that all the ascents were done in July and August. But these are people who are sitting in base camp for a week and then using a narrow window, or climbing it up to Camp 4 in a storm and then going to the summit. I know you will not have a lot of sympathy for those guys, right? But at least you got to go to Califate and drink beer. They just have to sit in base camp and hope that they've got internet these days. Okay, September becomes very stable again, but I'll be a little more clear about this later, about the Hunza and Hindu Kush versus the Baltoro. But the glaciers can become so bad. I mean, they're just parallel ice fins. You have to rappel down into each one and climb back up. The glaciers can be totally impassable by September. So you have to, if you have a target and you want to go in September, you need to research the approach very carefully. Maybe the mountain will be fine, but you won't actually get onto it because you'll get stuck in the glacier. Okay, as far as unclimbed peak climbing is concerned, there was AD and BC, right? BC was before Google Earth. Right? AD is after Google Earth. There is no, it totally revolutionized any sort of exploration. Back in the old days, you could go up the wrong valley. I mean, you could have a map, and it would have things drawn on it that had basically been guesswork. And you could follow the map and find yourself, completely on the wrong side of your mountain. So, this can't happen anymore. Google Earth does not make that kind of mistake. Now, Google Earth does make mistakes, and I think I wrote here, it does underestimate peak heights, and clearly it can't be relied on for objective data. But you can look at this and you can guess that there's ice falls here on this north face, and that doesn't look good, and you've got crevassed Serac lines everywhere, but this is the Karakoram, so there's always Serac lines. Right, but you never really know until you have a photograph to compare, how is that glacier, can I go up the middle of that glacier, or is it ice fins? Right, don't use Google Earth for that kind of stuff. Don't rely on it solely. Now, this is a mountain that if I tell you anything more about this, I have to kill you, but this peak does not show up on Google Earth. Right, it's in Tibet, so nobody can get to it anyway, at least of all me. But I don't know if you can tell if you look carefully at that ridgeline, this mountain is actually like my two hands. It's two big parallel fins. Right? So when you look at it from side on, you see this big shape like that, right? This huge fin. If you look at it from end on, you would see two towers. And Google Earth can't find that. It just shows a plateau cut off about this side. Right? So there are things, I don't know, have you ever tried Google Earthing Saratori?
Yeah.
Do you see anything?
Yeah,
Just see some stupid little lump, right? Anyway, so Google Earth is of course the first place to go these days. And sometimes when I'm bored and my head is full of theoretical physics, then I do just spend a little time flying over mountains and looking for cool objectives. Okay, the next place to go is this. So, Günter Seifert is an extremely OCD character, but I strongly recommend that you look at the site. Those of you who can't speak German, the mountains on the plan. Come on. What do you suppose that says?
14,800.
Exactly, the 14,800ers, right? So, just so you know, this says overview, this says regions and maps, this says high 7,000 meter peaks, panoramas from the summits, fantastic aerial shots, big glaciers, general literature, lakes, right? It's a tough one, right? Mass crossings, right? I mean, Google can probably do it for you, right? Interesting. Anyway,
These are pictures. Google cannot translate pictures.
I don't know. I didn't put this through Google. I didn't put this through Google Translate. I mean, I speak German, so it's fine for me. Okay, height records, new books, tragic events. Okay, everything is on here, and I will show you examples of pictures and maps shortly. But perhaps the single most important thing that Seifert does is he actually estimates peak heights very, very accurately to within a couple of meters by looking at some of the pictures. You know, he actually chases people who've been on the summits of mountains and asks them if they have really good panorama shots. Igor, you should talk to him. At least if you've been to anywhere in the Himalaya. So this is, now Tamotsu Nakamura, who's an 82-year-old Japanese guy, does rather similar things, but not with less sophistication. It's not a whole website. But he's a specialist in East Tibet, which is not the subject of this talk. And then there's another German guy called Wolfgang Heichel, who collects a lot of information on the mountains in Pakistan. So I'll show you what I mean by a few of these things as we go on. Right? Of course, Google is a good place to get information too. You can do an image search, all sorts of stuff comes up. I got an email out of the blue not long ago from somebody asking me, what do you know about the Hindu Raj? It's like, nothing. However, that's the highest mountain in the Hindu Raj. It's called Koyu Zom. It's 6,800 meters. And that's called Karol Zom, also called Thui, Thui, and it's about 6,600. And I just put Koyu, you go to some Wikipedia and you get Hindu Raj and you find the highest mountain is Koyu Zom, you put it in and you get this picture. Right? So Summit Post, Peak Web will also have stuff for you. Now interestingly, if you go to Wikipedia, occasionally they will give you a hit for the German site, and the German site has way more information about 7,000 meter peaks than the English site. I don't know how that happened, but somebody is contributing, maybe it's Seifert. Right? Maybe he's just writing all these pages for mountains. But you can definitely get more information and then get it translated. Now, so here's another example. I was looking at this is a photograph from Seifert's site. So he knew somebody that this is from, it's actually Chulu East. It's a rather simple trekking peak just north of the Annapurnas. But somebody carried a detailed, large format camera up there and took a detailed picture. And he labels every single mountain. You can't read it on here, neither can I. The resolution isn't good enough. But the resolution is good enough on his website. And the one I mentioned, I found this name, Chib Himal, and it turns out to be, I think it's that one. It's 6,600 and it's unclimbed. And you can find out where it is and get some photos of it. Remember what I said about Google Earth, right? You cannot really rely on it for, terrain, right, and objective dangers. You really need a photograph, right? So this is where to get an awful lot of photographs. So from Seifert's site. Right now, also, Seifert is the go-to guy for maps. He has maps like this of everywhere with all the heights on them. Now, again, you probably won't be able to read this. This is actually from the Batura Glacier. But I just got a section. He has huge maps covering most of the mountains. He's not actually so good on India, but he has a lot of density covering Nepal, especially, and a bit less on Pakistan. Now, there are other things. This I took from this is just a sketch made by Julian Freeman Atwood, who's an expert on West Nepal, and this was a source article. Unfortunately, most of these heights are not correct, but you can always go to Seifert and get them corrected. So you can definitely just get the lie of the land from all sorts of sources. Now, another one, I know rather facetiously here, make your own. I never made it my own, but one of my friends did. So you can go to the NASA site and download their photos which are the satellite photos, all have a little bit of three-dimensional information in them. And then there are people who make, and I've forgotten the name of the guy, but it will come to me eventually, who make software that you can just run over those pictures and generate your own contour map. So on that laptop, which is projecting these images, I actually have a bunch of, most of the megabytes are either photographs or they are contour maps that my friend once made for me. Most of them are 10 years old. So this technology has existed for a while, but what I cut out here is actually just north of the ogres and Latox. But if you really want to know the heights of the glaciers and how the steepness changes, you can do all of the stuff by making your own map or finding a tech-aware friend who does. Now, some of you are from MIT, so you have no excuse. Okay, more information. People love to claim that they did a first ascent just because they don't know about previous ascents. That's not really an excuse. It's like going to a different country and breaking the law and then claiming that you didn't know what the law was. That doesn't wash very well when people do it here, so why should it wash there? Right? So, the best place to go for reports is AEJ. Now, I apologize for this. The AEJ always appears with a beautiful panoramic picture here, kind of like the ones you just showed us. And it didn't come out when I did a screenshot. I don't know why. Anyway, they are really the go-to source now. As we all know, print media are dying, and everybody needs, all print media need to club together to put their information in only one place, because we can no longer afford a French Alpine Club journal, a Japanese Alpine Club journal, a German Alpine Club journal. And it's the Americans, it's always you guys who have the most money and the most people and the most sources. No, I mean, this is exactly true in physics as well. We all submit to the physical review, which is done by the American Physical Society. And this is part of your role in the world, and we all appreciate it. Thank you. But the American Alpine Journal is the source, right? And they have many people working to contact, Russian climbers, Korean climbers, Japanese climbers, or translators who get that information out to us. And most of it's on the web. The print, the doorstop thing they send you every year is still like a third of what's on the web. So they have a very good search function, so you can enter here and get all sorts of stuff. However, if you're sometime in the 80s or 70s and you want to know about ascents that may have been tried on 7,000 meter peaks in Pakistan and stuff like that, I suggest this place, the Alpine Club. This is British attitude for you. There's only one thing that's called the Alpine Club. Anyway, they do some useful things apart from story, and one of them is that they have put together this Himalayan index. I do not know how up to date the Himalayan index is, but since the AHA is doing everything in this millennium, that you could rely on the Alpine Club to have stuff from the last millennium if you need to know. And you can search this index by just latitude and longitude, or by ranges, or by peak names, and you can get what actually comes out. I didn't cut and paste that, but you just get a list of reported attempts and ascents on the mountains that you've highlighted. And the reports you will then be sent to another journal, or you won't be sent to it, but you'll be told where to find it. There are journals with names like High and Die Alp and old Alpine Club annual journals and so on. I honestly don't know where to get those sources, but sometimes you can get some. If you're lucky, it's also in AHA 1972 or something. But if you really can't find any other things, you may have to try contacting somebody in Britain to find out where to get a 1984 issue of High magazine or something like that. But I mean, this thing will definitely tell you if your peak's been climbed before. Okay, last things. I actually sent a copy of this to Jacob. Pakistan, as we saw earlier, the government doesn't maintain peak lists. You can just climb anything of any height according to the fee that was on the previous table, right? All peaks are allowed unless they're in what's called closed zones, and closed zones are right next to the Chinese border. And not even right next to the Indian border, that's a restricted zone, those the Gashaprums, right? Restricted zones, you may need to pay more, and you'll probably need a military liaison officer, but you can still climb anything there if you want, right? The Chapursan Valley, which I climbed in 13 years ago, is unfortunately closed at the moment, right? Nepal, by contrast, the Ministry of Tourism actually has a list of, the last iteration, it was 414 allowed peaks. Now, if your peak is not on that list, technically you're not allowed to climb it. So what you should do is find the nearest peak that is on the list and apply for it, and then maybe you'll get slightly lost, as long as you're certain about it. But
You just told us not to do that.
I did, but it's not, but it's a mountain, right? So you pay them for the permitted one, and then you explore the area, right? Right. Of those, 188 were listed as unclimbed. And this document, of which I cut out a piece, but you can hassle me or Jacob for an actual copy of it later if you want. I know that some of these 188 have been climbed. Some of them were climbed by me. Recently, legally, or mostly legally. I mean, the ones on this list were climbed legally because I can't get a permit for the ones that are not on the list. Anyway, so it is handy that if you want to actually find a target, you may begin here and start looking for, it will tell you the district it's in, it will give you a name. Names are not at all unique in Nepal, so you have to be ready to do a little bit of circuitous searching before you track down your mountain. If you're lucky, you'll find it on, or even if maybe you don't have to be lucky, you'll find it on safer site, right? So this is a useful source for Nepal. And finally, somebody was asking about weather earlier. There are lots of weather sources. I generally find mountain forecasts to be totally worthless. NOAA is the best, but they're not very user-friendly. I mean, interpreting that information and then translating it into 140 characters to send to your friends who have an inReach, that's a little bit complicated. YR.no, which is the Norwegian site, does an amazingly good job of wide coverage. I don't know why. They must run a particularly good model. One of my friends who is okay on being weatherman for me, so he's at home sending me 140 characters, and I'm on the mountain. He likes Meteo Blue because Meteo Blue has a multi-model, right? They actually compare the results of 4 or 5 different models. What's the temperature, what's the wind speed, and then try to figure out which ones agree. Now, the one thing you should know, as If said earlier, all of these guys can take meteorological data. I believe that's more or less open source data. And what you get is from a network of satellites, you get, at a particular altitude, you find out for each packet of air which direction it's moving, how fast it's moving, and how much humidity it has in it, so you can make guesses about precipitation and clouds, right? So, and then you basically extrapolate the whole thing forward with a very large computer, and these are a finite value for 3 or 4 days, right? Maybe longer if it's a really big, solid, high pressure. Maybe your weather will be stable for longer. If you're in a god-awful, Patagonian airstream, maybe your weather will be steady but not stable for a month, right? It will be abominable. But generally, any given forecast, you can't really trust it beyond that amount of time because chaos effects just break up whatever you can compute. What you should know is that none of these things are actually including this air packet that's moving through the atmosphere. As it bumps into your mountains, that's a much harder thing to model. And all of these guys are not modeling that, right? They're just telling you what's in the air packet. And it's up to you to figure out, okay, so when those air packets, this forecast that I'm getting, when it hits my mountain, are things better or worse than they say, right? In my experience, like Camp 2 on K2 is a wind magnet. The wind is always 3 times what they say it's going to be because it sort of rips around the side of the Abruzzi Ridge, right? On Ultar this past year, they would say that there will be a day with no snow, but you're in a cloud, and it turns out that when you're in a cloud at 6,000 meters, it's snowing. But that's not really in the information they have. There would be no snow falling out of those clouds if it was coming from 6,000 meters and landing, at 3,000 or 2,000. So you need to spend a bit of time understanding what the forecast you get from these guys actually means for your mountain. All right, so that was that. That was enough preaching. Now I'm going to actually show you some pictures of mountains that you've never seen before. Okay, so we'll start with northern Pakistan, So the key is this road here, which is the Karakoram Highway. And this is the place to avoid. This is Chilas. The Chilasis are known among all Pakistanis for being pretty retrograde. you get through that region and you get out to the Hunza, right? So the Hunza is one of the most beautiful places in the world. This is the one climbed peak, it's Rakaposhi. So here is, people are, every single green line you see here is due to irrigation. None of this is natural, but it's been irrigated for 200 or 300 years, and the result is obvious. Right? So you have these rushing rivers that are running grey and black in summer, and they are eroding their way through these piles of glacial outflow that are coming off these mountains over the millennia. Right? This is 2,200 meters. This is 7,800. Right? So that's the Hunza region. Now the Hunza kind of bisects northern Pakistan. As you go this way, this is the Hisbar range, the Biafo Hisbar crossing. The Baltoro is over here. So the Baltoro is much better known and more expensive, and there are fewer unclimbed peaks in that area, but here's K2, the Gashabrooms, and a few other mountains. For those of you who like alpine rock, K6, K7, and the Charakusa are over here. The Ogres and Trango and Latox are up here, and then you kind of pass from the the Baltoro district back through to the Hunza district. Right. On the west side of that lot, the Karakoram ends here, and then you have this thing that says Tuya Range, is also known as the Hindu Raj. Now, I don't know how many people of Indian origin are there in the audience. As you know, Indian politics is becoming pretty nationalist, and so they like Hindu Raj, which means Hindu Kingdom. You can guess that the Pakistanis don't like that at all. And since all of the mountains that were formerly called the Hindu Raj are in Pakistan, they found a new name, which is this one. All right, and then the Hindu Kush is over here. Right, so the Hindu Kush is actually the border zone between Pakistan and Afghanistan, but it's also the end of the high mountains. Once you get over on the Afghan side, you're into the Wakhan corridor, the Oxus River, and so on. So the high mountains kind of end on that border. All the areas of unrest are either here or way down south. So you are in essentially no danger going to northern Pakistan. Certainly, the people are moderate and the military can control the access routes because there's so few of them everywhere, in the Baltoro region and in the Hunza region. And as far as I know, in the Chitral region, the Swat region was cleared out a few years ago. The region that they can't control is this one, Kohistan, and that was what led to the Nanga Parbat massacre. Nanga Parbat is here. And this region is still basically outside government control. So I can't really recommend that you go there, although there are certainly, I know people who've done a lot of stuff there and gone on just fine. It's less guaranteed than all the other places, right? You could, of course, say, well, I'm climbing a mountain, so the objective dangers of that are probably higher than the objective dangers of being, in the crosshairs at the wrong moment. But that's the kind of decision you need to make on your own. Anyway, I'm going to show a bunch of pictures, basically radiating in concentric circles out from the Hunza. I will show pictures of different mountains. I don't have very many pictures from over this side, right, except theoretical ones. I've stood on a mountain here and photographed to the west. That's really the best I can do. So that was Rakaposhi. In the Hunza, that's the Golden Pillar of Spantik. I apologize, that has also been climbed for those of you who were just getting excited there. But you can see this from the roof of your hotel in Karimabad. Now, okay, unclimbed. So this is the world's highest unclimbed peak. And you say, which? Well, that's the Batara wall. So this is Batara 1, 2, 3, 4. That's Batara 5 and 6. And that thing, Muchu Chish, is unclimbed. So it's 7,400 meters, and it's the highest listed unclimbed peak in the world. Right, now, there is a higher unclimbed peak. It's Gankar Pensum, and it's in Bhutan. And you don't get any prizes for climbing it. A Japanese expedition had the permission. They went there. The Bhutanese said, "We request that you do not climb our highest mountain. It is sacred to us." And the Japanese said, "We're a Buddhist nation too. We will honor your request." And they climbed the sub-peak. So if you climb the main peak, all you really prove is that you're an asshole. Right? They would have done it if it can be done. Right? All you're doing is trampling on other people's. Because I know people who went in August and they found that I took this photograph in early June, and you can just climb, 50-degree snow, which is, if you climb it when it's been in the shade all night, it's completely, it's just perfect neve. These guys found miserable black ice all the way up here and finally got bogged down. Right? So you should go in early season, start up, I don't know whether you want that cool water or somewhere up here, and then just get up that ridge and camp a few times, and the last thing you've got to do is get across here. However, many of you may not have climbed a lot of 7,000ers before, and you might want to start with something a little less taxing. So I'm glad to show you some other pictures. So another thing you see right in the Hunza is, now this is actually climbed, but there's a lot of scope for new routes. This is a piece of high quality granite. Now I should have said while I had the map. There's a seam of granite that runs through the eastern part of the Karakoram. It starts in the Charakusa, goes through Mashabrum, the Payu, Lobsang, Trango, and Cathedral on the Baltoro Glacier are made of the same granite. I'll show you some bits of that granite seam up here in an unknown zone between Payu, Trango, and the Latox and Ogres, which are also made of that granite. The granite then kind of curves through the Solu peaks, which are smaller towers. It disappears for a bit. There's some granitic peaks down the Hispar, including, what's it called? I think Hispar Peak and Tahurutum, which the late Kyle Webster almost soloed in 2008. So there's a bunch of those peaks still sitting in here, and then they go through to Ulta, which is the peak that I had a bad experience on last year, and basically finish. Sorry, that wasn't supposed to happen. Can I get rid of it? No. Somebody just hit the red box. Thank you. But this is one of those pieces of granite. It's called Hunza Peak. It's 6,400 meters. That's Lady's Finger, or Buglumitu, which is 5,800. So this is, I don't know how good quality this granite really is.
Bad.
Sorry?
It's bad.
Is it abominable?
Yeah, it's terrible.
Right, because there's some good stuff on Buglumitu, but I'm not sure about this. But, okay, so we can ignore the next few slides. That's it from the side, so you see it's not completely vertical. That's it from above, or semi-above, so you can get an idea of what's there. And I mean, there are, when you look at it like this, you just think it's a big one scattered wall. But when you look at it like this, you realize that it's got some complex geometry, and you might be able to find some lines, and you might be able to find that if you go in early season, you might actually be able to climb snow and ice. Unfortunately, that picture was taken from a Pakistan Army helicopter, so most people don't have that angle, but I don't know if it's particularly helpful to you. Okay, let's move on. This is very close by on the other side of Ulta. There's a whole scan of these peaks. Now, again, I don't know the rock quality for sure. If you go in high summer, there is a risk of these things kind of decaying and falling on you. The best time of year to climb these might be June or September. But these are all in the 5,500 to 5,700 range. There's another couple off the picture on this side. But these are literally 1 day's walk from the Hunza. Okay, it's 2,000 meters up, but if you're acclimatized already, it's 1 day's walk. If not, it's 2 or 3. But to get onto this glacier, down here you're below 5,000. So this is not an altitude challenge, but it is an alpine climbing challenge. And I actually found that. We were crossing by under here to get onto the east ridge of Ultar, which is off the picture. And it's actually the thing that I'm about to show you again is on that peak, but it's a perfectly nice, sort of snow and ice line. It is south-facing, however, so I'm not sure about its durability later in the year. If you swivel 180 degrees from those peaks and look across the way, right, that's Malubitin, which is 7,400. But there's a bunch of, this is the granite towers that we're in amongst. These peaks, I believe it's that one is unclimbed. Now, unfortunately, you will see a little bit better in a later picture. There's long, long glacier approaches in there, and it's a little bit cut up on this side. It may be that if you really want to climb that peak, you should come from the other side. It's called something like Fuprash, and it's 6,600. These are the Mia peaks, they're 6,800. A couple of them may not be climbed as well, I'm not very sure. If you look again, one of the end pieces of this granite, the Batura wall is that thing in the background. This is called Hachinder Chish. Again, it's 1 day's hike to get a good look at this thing out of the Hunza Valley. That's been done by a Japanese team once many, many years ago. That, to the best of my knowledge, has not been done. This is about 6'9", and I mean, it's up to you to figure out a way up it, but it's up to me to point it out to you that this thing exists. Sorry, that's the wrong way. That peak is that one, and these peaks are somewhat smaller and more user-friendly. They're in the low 6,000 range, but they're all on the same corner, right by, this is, it's probably 10 miles as the crow flies from Hassanabad at the bottom of the, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do this too often. I should have put my map in more often, it's only going to show up once. But basically, from Karimabad, which is here, we're talking about stuff in this little area here in front of the Batura wall. And so these are not the challenging approach. Okay, that's a relatively random picture taken from up the Hispar Glacier. So as you start going east from the Hunza up towards the Snow Lake crossing, this is the first thing you see up on your right side, so on the south side of the glacier. Again, I cannot really guarantee all the terrain below, but certainly what's up above is interesting. Now, this is the view if you get above the Hispar Glacier. The Hispar is not as bad as it looks. The Hispar villagers drive their sheep and goats up this side of the glacier on that moraine to eat various grassy meadows during the summer. So it is possible to get your stuff up here. Unfortunately, Hispari porters are some of the most retrograde on the planet, and it's very difficult to work with them. You will have to pay a relatively large amount of money. Sometimes it's better to acclimatize somewhere else first, and then really minimize the size of the expedition that you try to bring up this glacier, so that you keep your costs under control and hopefully your strikes and other things as well. This is high up the Hispar. That's Hispar Peak, which is on the south side of the glacier. So we're looking almost east here. I don't know much about the history of these guys. What I was going to draw your attention to is just off the picture here, and that is this thing. So this is Macron Chish. It's 6,600, and it's been tried a couple of times, mostly from the back. As you can see, it's not exactly lending itself to easy alpine walking. So I'm not, but it's a very prominent and obvious, unclimbed candidate, which is again 2 days walk from the Karakoram highway. And if you pan to the right again, this is what you get. So Macron was just off the picture there. And these guys are all in the 6'3", 6'4" range. If you don't like the look of this side, get on Google Earth and check out the approach from the other side, which is next to Spantic. Now, I was doing that recently, and there may be some possibilities. I didn't really, seal the deal and figure out which one of them I'm going to climb. I suggest that to you as a target if you like the look of any of those. I've actually forgotten what this was. Oh, this is if you're. So I scanned around. I went west from Ulta and Karimabad, then I went east. Now I'm looking north. So if you get onto that east ridge of Ulta and look north, this is the other side of the Batura Glacier. And this is like the very furthest end of the Karakoram. All of these peaks are in the 6'5" to 7" range. And once again, they are, maybe one or two of them have been climbed by teams that went up the Batura Glacier, which is behind here, and wanted to do something on the Baturas, but it was too big and too crevassed. They may have been able to do one or two of these things, but generically, most of these are still in the unclimbed category. Okay, and this is now further north still. This is the Yashkut Glacier. So this is a glacier system the size of, the Bernese Oberland in central Switzerland, and nobody had ever been there. Actually, 2 foreigners had visited before us, and we wandered in here with a little bit of spare time after being repelled by Batura 2 one year, and managed to climb, I think, one of the peak that's just off the picture, and this guy, but we couldn't climb that one. That thing, which is called Yashkut 1, is 6,500 meters and still untouched. I think it's untouched as well as unclimbed. Early or late season, there are probably good options for getting up some of these snow gullies. The south side did not look good when I looked at it on Google Earth many years ago, but that would be, the thing, what was mostly not good was the glacier access rather than the actual climbing, so it would definitely be worth a look. This is another random picture. Yukshin Gadan Sa and Kanjuk Sa just off the picture. So this guy sits right in front of Yukshin Gardan, in front meaning on the north side of it. I actually have not ID'd that either. And that, I think, is one of the Lataks. It's like I think that's the west end of Latak 2. It's possible that Huber's route goes up there. You can't see the Ogre 2 because it's hidden behind the Ogre 1. This is a big zoom picture because it's 50 kilometers from where I'm standing to here. Still on the same subject, that's basically, those peaks were here. If I look a little bit to the north, in the background, that's K2. And the thing in front of K2, I also have never ID'd. I don't know what that is, but it actually looks like it's mostly made of snow. And it's in the 6,000 meter range, so it might be interesting. I believe that's Chongtar, which is a 7,300 meter peak that's just on the Chinese side of Mustak Tower in front of K2. And that's the crown. I suggest that you look up the crown and read the report of the first ascent, but it's way off on the Chinese side of the Karakoram. It's 7,300, and it's hard. I don't know if it's made of good stuff or not, but the subject of this slideshow is supposed to be what's in the foreground. That's Skirish Sar, which has been done, but these things, which are on the at the top of the Virgerar Glacier before you cross into Snow Lake, they've not been done. So once again, an area worth investigating. You know, if I solved all the problems for you, this wouldn't be fun, right? I'm just supposed to be directing you to interesting things, and one of these pictures is going to grab you, and you're going to say, that one, right? And then you will need to start doing your homework. Anyway, if you pan around further to the north, you fall out of the Karakoram immediately, right? So these are still the end of the Karakoram peaks. Basically, you've crossed into the Pamir, or the Pamir as it runs into the Kunlun right here, and suddenly these peaks are really quite boring, right? But, you know, apart from that, they're also much easier to climb. So if you want a warm-up on peaks that nobody's ever touched, you can try, you know, although I say boring, right, but you've got some 6,000 meter peaks, there's some serious altitude, some serious approaching, some serious judging of snow conditions still to be done, right? So just because the Kunlun is a bunch of rolling hills and so is this edge of the Pamir, doesn't mean that you shouldn't go there. Somebody asked me to referee an application for peaks in the Boesam Glacier, which is like 2 valleys over. And some British guys were just going to go to the Boesam Glacier and climb some low 6,000ers. But nobody's ever been there before. Right? If that's your thing, you're not that into technical difficulty and, you know, Patagonia-style steepness, but you want to go somewhere that nobody's ever been before, this is as good a place as any. And that's another view, panning around right to the north this time. You know, maybe you simply disagree with me when I call them boring. They're only boring in comparison with, you know, that. Compared to Mount Washington, they're probably not that boring. Okay, so I put my analogy. Okay, Mount Washington is that shape. The excitement factor is not it's not visual, right? It's the experiential thing. The 85 mile an hour winds and the minus 26 temperatures at the same time, right? If you want to have that kind of fun, go for it. I will say I had that kind of fun. I think maybe 1992, and for all the 76 6,000 meter summit, never been colder than there. Washington is easily the record holder. Anyway, here we are again. What I'm going to show you now is as promised, a bit more of that granite in this central region between the Baltoro and the Ogres and Lataks, and then I will finish up by showing you a couple of pictures staring that way. But I'm not offering you a whole lot. Google, I'm sure, has better pictures of the Hindu Kush in 2-year range than I do. Okay, so maybe you know that thing in the foreground. That is Nameless Tower, better known as Trango 2, right? Because there's actually Great Trango and Trango something else sitting right in front of it, right? But this is the Trango Tower. But that never features on anybody else's pictures, but it's sitting right up behind them, right? The Trango Glacier runs down here. There's another glacier running down between the Trangos and Pive, but nobody ever pays much attention to those things, right? But as you can see, they are, this is Patagonia-style stuff, right? And I believe it's all made of that same granite stuff. I didn't zoom out so you can see more of that thing or that thing, but these are like cathedral and more Trangos. If you look just next to that, the next glacier up, you see, what are you doing? You see this thing, right? It's 6,800. I think it's called Biange. And everybody walks past it on the way to K2 and the Gashabrooms or to Trek. And I am not aware of anybody who's ever stopped and actually tried to put something on it, but it's south facing. This is a June picture, right? I at least always go into the Karakoram and to the peaks in early June to try to be done by mid-July for weather reasons. So I can't guarantee that all that snow is still there if you try it in July. In general, people go to the Trangos in July and August when things are warmer, but they also do end up having to spend a lot of time waiting for weather. I mean, that's sufficiently low that it's mostly, this is not a badly broken. Okay, it's broken, but it's mostly icy. It's not like deep ice fins and falling blocks, at least as far as I know. So I draw this to your attention, right? So, and the approach is short, right? You do need, unfortunately it is a restricted zone because it's up the Baltoro, but I mean, you should check the height of it again, because one of the good things about this guy, at least, is that it's only 6,200, so you don't need any of the paperwork. Right? Everything below 6,500 is just a trek, right? So I don't putting that. Right? Regulation-wise, it's just a trek, so you don't need to worry about all the military liaison officer stuff. Okay, and now I'm up the Panma Glacier, which sets off from, it's west of Paiu and the Trangos, and this is another one of those north-south trending ridges, and it just looks like that, and nobody's ever really looked at it. People go up this glacier to try to get to the Ogres and Latox. They go up behind the whole lot to try to get to Shipton Spire. They go up behind it also to climb some of the Trangos, but they don't go very far. I mean, they don't go as far as, usually they don't go as far as these things. But, there's a lot of stuff up there, which looks kind of like this. And if you want close-ups of some of these towers, maybe I have them. And I don't have it from a number of angles, so, caveat emptor, right? This could be this could be 30 degrees on the side facing you. Might be quite boring, but at least you get to the summit. But suddenly the sides of it are extremely steep. This is more alpine granite. If your thing is alpine granite and you have to go to Chamonix or Patagonia to get it, Pakistan is maybe the other place, right? Or the Ruth Gorge, right? Or the Great Wall of China and Kyrgyzstan. These are the places where you get hardcore alpine granite. Maybe the biggest concentration is that seam that runs through the Karakoram. Not all of it has been explored. And if you go further up, I can't guarantee that this is granite anymore, but this is a face that caught my eye. It's 6'4", 40 meters, and this thing is nearly 1,000 meters high. I can't tell you how steep it is. I haven't been able to look at it side on, but Google Earth can do that for you. It's big enough to feature. I think that's the zoomed out picture, so there it is over there. And in the foreground, there's a bunch of these fingers that nobody's ever touched. Now, these things hiding in the background, these are Chongtar and a couple of other peaks, Chang Tok, 70 something. Technically, they're in China. If you walked over onto them from Pakistan, which is the easier way to do it, probably nobody would notice. But they have been, I believe that all three of these have been climbed. It's possible that one of these has not. But what you're not supposed to listen to that comment, you're supposed to look at enraptured at these towers in the foreground of this thing here, if you're into technical climbing. Right? If you're into, high altitude, then this may in fact be your thing after all. So there is, all of this is still on the way to the Ogres and Latox. And the thing about Nepal is that because of everything, because everything is generally good for climbing twice a year, everything on the way to the big peaks has been climbed. In Pakistan, everybody is completely maxed climbing their target, and they just walk by this stuff because they don't have time or bandwidth to deal with it. So if you instead make this your target, you can definitely still get your name in the AEJ for doing a first ascent. Right, now, if you get up to the Ogres and Latox, which are now that way from where I took this picture, there is an interesting view that looks like that. This is the central Biachirahi tower that's been done. I don't know if you can see the colors particularly well, but some of this rock is grey and some of it is reddish. And it turns out the reddish rock is really hard to protect. However, if you like the idea of a big wall, you could try this guy. Sorry, this guy here. And if you like the idea of Alpamayo, you could try that guy there. And spoiler, or that now I will spill the beans. It's the same peak.
Wow.
It's the front side and the back side of the same thing. So, of course, if you want to climb that thing, but you're not really into egg climbing, you can, of course, climb that thing and get to the top anyway. So that's, you know, you would go to the standard Choctaw base camp to have a go at that thing, but it's less than 6,000.
What's the distance there at that base?
That's actually only about 300 or 400 meters high. It's not particularly big. I mean, you might be a little disappointed if you slog all the way up there and then you only get this much climbing, but it's, you know, it's that beautiful anyway. I can say that much. Let's see. So this is from a different peak north of the Choctaw base camp, looking at some of the, these are some of the giant Hispar peaks. I think that's Kunyang Chish and Pumari Chish. That, I believe, is still unclimbed, and so are these. So is this thing here. So these are the Hispar Glacier runs along there. So it's a Hispar approach past the big peaks, and then turn left and choose which one of these side glaciers you want up the Yukma or the Tahurutum Glacier. That's looking west. If you look more north, this is actually northwest. That guy is, as far as I know, not in recorded history, right? So if you can approach up, the challenge here is to get over the long glacier approaches, and then the mountains themselves are relatively small. But again, if you're into exploration and remoteness and not a huge amount of climbing challenge when you get there, these are good candidates. So this is so Snow Lake is down here, and these are the crossings of passes like the Lupke La and I think it's called the Braldu La, but I need to check. Crossing over into the Virjarab, Cordopian, and Braldu glaciers. There's several different crossings. None of them are particularly easy, and you may not want to do the crossing. It's very painful to have to pay for porters from one end to carry all your stuff to the other. But if you approach from the Biafo side, you get a Skole porters who know what the score is and don't demand outrageous prices, so they can bring you into the bottom of these things and go away again while you do your climbing. And if you look around to the north of the Choctaw, that thing is called Bobisteer, and we climbed it, but we weren't first. It was climbed by Japanese. But that thing is untouched. Again, you could probably get a rock route up this side and a snow route up the back side, whichever one takes your fancy. And I think that's probably it's another view of the crown. It's maybe my last picture from the Baltoro Ogur-Laytop region. The crown is, hidden in the mists of legend, and it's also hidden in the politics of China, so you're not going to get in there. But there is all of this stuff, which is accessed from the Nobande Glacier on the Pakistan side.
So why isn't it accessible from China?
It's in Xinjiang.
Okay, so
it's huge expeditions, it's bad rivers, and it's $50,000 peak fees and all sorts of things. And now it's the human rights situation as well. So I'm not actually 100% sure, because I asked about an expedition to a different part of Xinjiang, and my agent implied that it might be possible, but of course he needs to say that or he's not going to get my money. It is possible that the Chinese still want to project an image of business as usual in Xinjiang, and as long as you're channeled the right way and don't see any of the wrong thing, you might still be able to go there. But much more likely is it's just going to turn into another Tibet. It'll just be closed. I can't say anything on that just now. One needs to keep one's eye on the news. In fact, I think the annual Communist Party Congress is going on right now in Beijing. I don't know if we'll say anything about that. Okay. Finally, this is looking west out towards the Hindu, the mountain range formerly known as the Hindu Raj, now known as the Tui Range, and the Hindu Kush in the far distance. So this is a relatively wide angle shot with just mountains off into as far as the horizon. These are zooms, so more to the northwest, more to the west, and more to the southwest. So, pick your poison. I can't tell you exactly which valley they're up and so on, but I can give you photographs in which you can do the research. I think that one is more to the south. And again, All right, so that was the first half. Any questions on Pakistan before we move on? I can of course move a little faster. Those of you who don't know Nepal very well, and those of you who can't read what it says on this map,
Bruce, do you want to take a couple questions?
I didn't see any hands go up. You have some.
I have somebody.
I found this map just using Google, so you can find, yeah.
You mentioned a strike. You said you were talking about like a strike with your porters.
Yeah, porters always just dump your stuff because they know they have you over a barrel.
Got it.
So they just say, give us more money.
Or we'll take all your stuff.
Or they just won't go home and leave you. Or in the Bar Valley, they drop gasoline on your stuff and set it alight. I mean, there are various tactics. But so most of these guys do a good job because they want you to come back. They want more people to come. Some of them don't seem to care. And so if the rest of the world knows that they're going to burn your baggage and you won't climb your peak, they don't really mind somehow.
It's like taxi versus Uber. For driver, you're liberating. And for taxi driver, they do whatever they want.
I can't judge. Anyway, no, there have been problems, yeah.
Maybe just mention like the different ethnicities in the different valleys in Pakistan, because I think that plays a huge factor into everybody's experience there.
It's a little complicated, right? The Baltoro region is all Shia Islam. They're not particularly progressive. They're also not the most regressive. The most regressive are these guys here. They're also Shia. Hunza is very finely split. On the north side, most of the people are Ismaili. The Ismaili Muslims follow the Aga Khan. He tells them to get educated, learn English and so on, and they do. And so they are, because they function much better in the tourist industry and in business and so on. On the other side of the river, it's once again Shias, and they are, there the mullahs don't, if you're on this side, you don't see any girls above the age of 6, right? They're all locked in the home still, right? The whole area is very much a patchwork. Some of Swat used to be quite progressive. That's where Malala Yousafzai was from. Now she's from Birmingham. The Chitral is also finely balanced. Parts of it are progressive, parts of it are extremely regressive with the proximity to the tribal areas. So it's not only ethnicity or religion that does it. I mean, the languages are, here they speak Balti, which is close to Tibetan. Here they speak Wakhi, which is close to Afghan. Here they speak, I think it's Shina, which is close to Pashto. And in the middle of the Hunza, they speak Burushaski, which isn't close to anything. Right? So it's a big patchwork of people, but I'm not quite sure which of these factors affects how well they work as porters. Right? Because I think it's just the volume of people going through Ascoli that makes everybody go there to get work. And they understand that if they work, they'll get the money, and it'll all be done. And the money is this much. And unless the expedition, like Korean expeditions in the last decade, used to just pay double when there was a porter shortage, and everybody would go and work for them. But things are back to more normal now. Even in the Ismaili areas, it's hard to get porters because, they have 2 or 3 kids down country studying IT and earning money, right? They've worked very hard to send their kids to school, and nobody actually wants to, it's hard work carrying loads. It's easier just to sit in your field or to sell your potatoes or to do other things like driving cars and so on, right? So it's actually hard to get porters in this area now. There's still a cartel situation that for every single valley you have to get porters from the same village. The worst of all is Shimshal, which is up here, the access to all those peaks that are beyond the Karakoram. And they can screw you for as much as they want because your trip is finished if you don't pay them. And you cannot bring porters from, Ascoli or from Soest to work in those valleys. That would cause a riot. There would just be a fist fight. Now, fist fights happen all the time between different ethnicities of porter around Nanga Parbat. If you actually want to trek around Nanga Parbat, you have to change porters 3 times. Right? You can only use the porters from the valley system that you're in, and there's 3 different. Nanga Parbat is a huge triangle. And so you have to actually, you have to coordinate so the guys from the one side will come up the pass to meet you, and the guys from the other side will carry your stuff up. It's that bad. right? So I don't really recommend this region, but I understand it's quite beautiful. So yes, I mean, I don't know if that helped answer the question. The Bar Valley in here is the one where they once set light to people's goods. The Hispar is up here, and these guys, the Hispari approach to things is encapsulated in the following story. Somebody was going to donate a hydro scheme to Hispar village, and so they bought it, paid for it, put it in jeeps, drove it up to Hispar village, and the Hisparis demanded to be paid to unload it. That's how they feel about outsiders and about economic gain. Anyway, okay, Nepal is not quite that bad. In fact, in Nepal, everybody understands that you work, you get money. Okay, so I'm going to tell some rather accelerated stories from two regions, both in the far west. Kanchenjunga, Makalu, Everest, Rolwaling, Langtang, Ganesh, Manaslu, Annapurna, Dalagiri, Mustang, which is ethnically all and geographically all Tibetan plateau, Dolpa, Mugu, Humla, and Takfu Himal is all the way at the end. So those are the ranges that what's the first thing you need to know when you stare at Nepal. Now, actually, this map was made by. There is a thing called the Great Himalayan Trail if you feel like walking it. It's 2,700 kilometers and lots of high passes. But there are semi-marked trails everywhere across the country now running across this pink line. But this is a handy map for showing what I'm going to show. I will tell you a couple of stories and show you pictures from all the way up in this corner, and then from about here. This is the Mugu district. So the biggest problem with the far west of Nepal is access. So you can see some roads. There are roads up many of the valleys now. They get washed away frequently each monsoon, but there are no roads to Simikot. The Chinese are finishing a road this way, coming in from Tibet. There's one over here, and there's one in here, but they don't actually meet at Simikot yet. So you fly, and it costs $600 return because it's 2 flights, right? You need to fly from Kathmandu to Nepal-Ganj, and then Nepal-Ganj is where you get where they run the flights in West Nepal. You can take a bus across this part. Basically, you go from Kathmandu down the Trisulia River, out onto the flatlands, and then along the flatlands until here, and then you fly back in. So here's Simikot Airport. It's really a hub of activity of Indian pilgrims going to Kailash. So that's actually why this road is being completed. But right now you come by a road to here, you fly to there, you take a helicopter across the hillside. I don't know if any of you know the name Tourid. It's a billion-dollar Chinese gear company, and the woman who owns it is the one who made the wrong kind of headlines 2 years ago by climbing Mount Everest after either after the earthquake or after the Porter strike. She paid a lot of money and got flown to Camp 2 by the Nepalese Air Force because nobody else was allowed to fly. Okay, this is Nepal. It does not look like Pakistan, right? Trekking in Nepal looks like this in all the lowlands, up to 3,000 meters. Everything is irrigated. It's all paddy fields. People are working very hard to eke out a living on all the hillsides. Right? There are beautiful rivers. There are trails, which are, people are living there and farming, and there are livestock being moved around, and there are good trails. You finally start to see the mountains. That's actually Saipal, which is just over 7,000. It's a climb peak. This is everything in West Nepal goes by mule. I draw your attention to these things. I'll show you a couple more pictures because they've not been done. So this guy is 5,900. We're on a pass here, and just right next door to it. Sorry, I think I said the wrong thing. That one is low 6,000s, and this one is 5.8, and then that one is 5.9. So these things are all just sitting around close to, this pass that we trekked across with mules is 5,000. And it's all just, this is like the California Sierra or something. You wander across talus slopes and scrub grass and get to the base of glaciers. And this is actually the very end of September, so the October and November season is just starting. And we trekked on further. There was a funny lake with ducks in it. We went on a migratory route to somewhere. And it's not all sweetness of light. At some point you do run out of trails. And this peak is called Abdang, and actually there are mixed reports as to whether anybody's climbed it. From the other side it's a very low angle, but I think I heard that somebody had climbed it, and then I heard somebody else contradict that statement and say they failed. So it's worth checking up. It's just over 6,000. Crossing one more pass, and now we're really onto the Tibetan Plateau, which you can kind of see taking shape in the background. There is a road. This is where the Chinese-built road comes in and down over this pass and then stops. And eventually you swing into a side valley and you're faced with this. Now, we went to this area, the Takfu Himal. These two are on the permitted list. And we went there. That one's not on the permitted list, but it's not unclimbed anymore either. And that one was one of the ones on the permitted list, but we climbed them, so what am I going to tell you? Well, it's beautiful. If you want to climb them again, there's a lot of scope for new routes. We only climbed them once, so, and in fact, you know, we didn't climb anything on this side of these two peaks. We actually had relatively rotten weather. We didn't climb anything on that side of this peak. In fact, we only traversed the ridge from side to side. That looks very spectacular, but hang on, I think I have a picture showing it. No, I don't. Sorry. From the side, it's this shape. It's really a 30-degree slope. Just looks good from that angle. We had fairly rotten weather. We had a big southwesterly flow last year, 2018, coming, you know, throughout October. There was deep snow on the glaciers, which was kind of annoying. I've never seen that in Nepal in post-monsoon before. Like that side of this peak is still available, so is everything on the other side. So that guy, I eventually climbed that. We didn't climb this. And once again, if your thing is not really steep technical, but it is, but you do like exploration, everything over the north side of that is a fairly low angle, but completely untouched. As you go over here, things get bigger and bigger until they start to look like that. This is Gurla Mandata. It's been climbed 7,700. It definitely dominates everything on that side. Behind it is Lake Manasarava, and behind that is Kailash. These guys, These guys, I'm not very sure. I think that's being climbed. It's like Gurla Mandata 2, but I think that one may not have been at 7,200. But I think it's a border peak. I don't know exactly how easily you could get to it from the Nepalese side. But you see, you know, on the south sides of these things, they look like a scree mass. On the north side, it's all snow. You can pick your poison in there too. Now, looking back across where we trekked, we had come across this range somewhere in there, but you can see once you get to the summits, there's an awful lot of 6,000 meter peaks. That one looks particularly obvious. That's, you know, the continuation of the same picture. The Karnali River heading back down to Simikot is like this one. This is the Limi Valley, and that's everything in between. Behind is more. You see this pointed peak here again, just for reference. And that's it in close-up. Now, these peaks in the background are more than 100 kilometers away, and I visited them on the other half of my trip, so I'll show you better pictures of them later. That one has been climbed, that one has not been climbed, and that one was only climbed in October last year by yours truly. But these things in the foreground, I mean, I think this guy is that guy, but I'm not particularly sure, because that's obviously somewhat foreshortened. Yeah, there are some similarities and differences. You can look at that more closely. This is actually out to the west, and I believe all of these peaks are in India. In the far distance is Nanda Devi, but much closer, I'm actually not very sure what the status of any of these peaks is. That one's probably due Nigeria and has been done, but the rest of them, no idea. I mean, one of the messages you take away from the stock is there's an awful lot of unclimbed 6,000 meter peaks still out there. There's one of them, looking over toward relatively close by, but I suspect already in India. And that's another view to the peaks rather close to the next ridge south of our mountains, just to remind you that there's stuff everywhere. So these guys in the far background are climbed. This is Api. Saipal is over there. They've been done, but this is one of those. We didn't touch any of these things, which are all on the Nepalese border. I will also show you pictures of the peaks behind that one. So this is them here, somewhat from above. But all the north sides, once again, are snow adventures. The south sides, I can't be so sure of. A couple more pictures of a few of those. When the weather actually got slightly nicer. Now, that was a selection of stuff all the way out in this corner of the country. This map is slightly on its side. I think you can see the lines of latitude run that way. The last thing I did, because I had some spare time, was to go trekking in this region. This is the Mugu region. I have to be doubly sure that that's actually what I want to talk about. Yeah, so actually it's right here. So instead of going to Simikot, I took a bus, which you can actually drive up roads via Jumla and finally to Gangadi, and then you walk up the valleys into the Mugu area, right up this one. And so I went to this little corner here, which happens to have that 6,800 meter peak in it, but it had already been done. So approaches, once again, beautiful river valleys. Much less, there's no vegetation here, right? This is already beyond the zone that people have actually tried to cultivate. The slopes are too steep. The last village, we'd already passed the Nepalese zone into the ethnically Tibetan zone, and there's an ethnically Tibetan animal, of which you see a lot. And that's actually ethnically Tibetan fuel. Smells good when you burn it. Last cedar forest, and then finally up out of all the valleys and onto the sort of high flat valleys that lead into the mountains themselves. This thing is 6,300 and has not been climbed. I walked all the way to the back of the valley past this thing, which is just over 6,000 and has not been climbed. The rock quality is not good, so I would have to advise you to find something else. Find the snow lines here. There's another impressive lake, which I spent a bit of time Google Earthing around before I went there. This is exactly at 5,000 meters, and I did swim in it once for a very short time. There's this strange ice fall coming down, which I'll show you again later. But this is the Koji La. It leads over to Tibet, and it's supposed to be totally closed. You're not allowed to go in and out of Tibet. But there was a fairly well-marked trail running over this pass, and I'm not sure, it might be some sort of human underground railroad thing. I didn't see anybody, and it was a good time of year, so I can't really comment on whether this is what this is being used for. When you get onto that pass, you see this. These guys have not been climbed. They look quite impressive from this viewpoint, but I'll show you a view down on them a little bit later. The glaciers are very easy to cross. It's better to have crampons. You might slip, but they're all. This was now November, and the weather was normal post-monsoon weather, right? Bright blue sky, cold winds, icy glaciers. No. You can see all the crevasses. You don't have to fall into them. Here is that view I promised you. So there's the lake. So I was camped down by the lake, and it's about 300 vertical meters up onto that col. And those are the mountains I just showed you, so they're not super high, but they're a little over 6,000.
Where's that
Is
trail?
the trail?
Yeah, where's that trail?
The trail goes up. You have to go up above the lake, behind this rock. You don't really have to scramble up the shitty scree. There's big talus blocks, and then you can cross over right under the rock and then down again onto this thing. And then you can basically follow across the glacier and go down into Tibet if you want. Or I actually angled back up the other way to climb one of my target peaks. But there's a lot of peaks around there, as you'll see in the related pictures. That's looking straight across the valley. There's a line of stuff around the 6,300 meter range that's not being done. That's looking into the distance. Now, I don't know how many of you other than Jacob will recognize this because I gave him the solution a few days ago, but that's Dalagiri 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I believe, and then it goes into Churen Himal and Putahyunchili. But I was going to point out the guys in the foreground to you that they're all, this glacier is very easy to get to walk on, but the approach is from Tibet. So you would have to climb up from the Nepalese side and get onto it. And the slopes there are a little bit steeper. But, I mean, not impassable. Some of these things are doable, but you've got to get your glacier travel done. That's Annapurna, also, big zoom picture. And again, there's a lot of stuff in the foreground that is essentially completely untouched. That thing Chib Himal that I mentioned, but much earlier, is part of a long chain of peaks heading that way towards Mustang. And that's what it looks like with a big zoom, but there's just a lot of terrain in here that's not really been explored at all. North of Annapurna. Looking in the other direction, so this is, these are the red plateau lands of Tibet, and these are the steep valleys and peaks of Nepal, and this is the ridgeline joining them. That guy's been climbed, it's called Kubi Kangri. Apart from that, nothing on this chain has been done. A couple closer ups. So in the background is Gola Mandata, so the peaks that I was showing you earlier are just over here. This stuff, most of it's not been touched. And zoom around, so that peak was the one that was on the right of the previous picture, that's Kubi Kangri. That one, for example, is not climbed. That face is not touched. There's a slight detail that I think this side of the range is in Tibet, but there's not exactly water guards, so if you can cross over if you can get up the passes from the Nepalese side, you can come around to inspect these things. That's once again looking rather closer up. So these are the peaks I was just showing you, but these are the peaks that were right next to me. Very dry glaciers, lots of peaks that you can walk over the summits of with relatively easy snow work. The rock quality is abominable, so there's nothing to do on that side here, or of that type here. Although Mick Fowler climbed a peak called Gabe Ding a few years ago, and may have won another Pele d'Or, I don't remember, but Gabe Ding is somewhere behind this range. And what he told me was that Gabe Ding was the only thing in the area that had good rock, and he managed to find it at the north face of this Gabe Ding peak. More views of across some of these peaks, actually more towards Saipal this time. Sorry. Now, looking out over Tibet, so I shouldn't really be showing you this because this talk is not about that, but you can get into these peaks, right? Plateau Tibet, the counties of West Tibet are still open. That thing was done by Koreans in the 90s. That was done by me in 2006. You can vaguely see a pointed peak here, we did that one too, but all of these things are still untouched. They're all low 6000s. And for that, you have to go to Lhasa and then drive. Okay, for us it was 2 days, but the road's been paved since, so it's probably like 6 hours drive west of Lhasa to get to these peaks. And that is still permissible for foreigners, at least foreigners on a tourist visa. Much closer to home.
Do they charge permit fees in Tibet?
Yes, but they're not very high. The big costs in Tibet are logistics. They're paying for land cruisers and people. Costs are just much higher. And fuel is much more expensive because you have to ship it from 1 million miles away up onto the plateau. So, I mean, same with Everest. I mean, the Everest peak fee is lower from the north side, but in the end, by the time you work out all the other logistics, then it's not particularly cheaper than Nepal. This is right next to what I was. These are just some very pointed peaks that were rising directly out of the valley I was in. I was climbing some stuff that was a little further over. This thing is unclimbed. It's 6,623. It goes by the name of Lalong or Chandi Himal, and it's waiting for you if you want it. That thing also I have no ID on or climbing information. This was actually, I don't know if I included the picture, but that's behind that peak Kubi Kangri that had been climbed. These are the peaks that I promised to show you from a long distance away. And closing up, I tried to go over to look at the south side of this peak on my last trip there, but I basically ran out of time and energy, and the temperatures were falling fast into December, so I didn't get very far. But this is the north side of a range of peaks in the Dolpo. I don't know if this side is particularly conducive to climbing. It's all like banded rock, but there are other ways onto these peaks which definitely have various snow options on them. And closing up, this was once you get behind these peaks, this is the upper Dolpo. It's beyond the range of humans, basically. People don't graze animals over here. It's too far from anywhere in Nepal. So you're really on your own, just even for a trekking experience back in here. And for a climbing experience, you can go up one of these valleys. That guy looks like an obvious target. That thing is actually very close to that, if not being that. This is just an interesting view on it. And oops, these are more rock climbing peaks if you want things around 5,800. And closing picture of that one is, I don't know if any of you can recognize it, but that was the sub peak and that was the main peak of this thing. So this is the view from the northwest. And you might think that the right way to do it would be up here. This is the view from the south. Yeah, maybe in the old days there was snow all the way to the top, but nowadays if you want snow you might have to go around the side. I can't make any guarantees about the rock quality, it's probably not great. And that may have been it. So that was my show.